Asia Pacific Moot Court, National Rounds 2020, ICRC. Moot problem. Situation in the Kingdom of Revis. In the case of the prosecutor versus Lyot Keynes, before the International Criminal Court at The Hague. Contents. Instructions, page 1. Indicative authorities and research materials, page 2. Statement of agreed facts, page 3. Charges, page 9. Annex 1, regional map, page 10. Annex 2, list of state parties to treaties, page 11. Instructions. The first is the proceedings. The hearing takes place in the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court, ICC, at the confirmation of charges. Stage pursuant to Article 61 of the 1998 Rome Statute of the ICC, Rome Statute. At this stage, the prosecutor must support each charge with sufficient evidence to establish substantial grounds to believe that the person committed the crime charged. The accused may object to the charges and challenge the evidence presented by the prosecutor. Fact second is facts and evidence. The case is entirely fictional. The statement of agreed facts includes all the facts supported by the evidence that have been transmitted to the defense, as well as facts and evidence presented by the defense. Teams should confine themselves to the facts applied. Neither the prosecutor nor the defense may introduce new evidence or facts at the hearing. Article 61, 6c of the Rome Statute is not applicable. Teams may, nonetheless, draw reasonable inferences from the facts. They may also question the credibility or weight of the evidence. Third, procedure. The problem is not intended to raise question of procedure other than the rights of the accused pursuant to Article 66 and 67 of the Rome Statute. Any other procedural questions should be ignored. The fourth, jurisdiction and admissibility. Counsel may, if relevant, address issues of conflict classification. Any other issues of jurisdiction and admissibility should be ignored. Fifth, applicable law. In accordance with Article 21 of the Rome Statute, 1. The court should apply A. In the first place, this statute, elements of crimes, and its rules of procedure and evidence. B. In the second place, where appropriate, applicable treaties and principles and the rules of international law, including the established principles of the international law of armed conflict. Failing that, general principles of law derived by the court from national laws of legal systems of the world, including as appropriate, the national laws of states that will normally exercise jurisdiction over the crime, provided that those principles are not inconsistent with this statute, and with international law and internationally recognized norms and standards. Second, the court may apply principles and rules of law as interpreted in its previous decisions. 6. Teams are encouraged to look at the case law of international and national courts. If teams rely on decisions of national courts, these should be leading decisions, and teams should expect to be asked for copies of the head note and the portion of the transcript or judgment referred in their argument. 7. Participation of treaties. At all material times, the treaties listed at Annex 2 will enforce for the Kingdom of Revis and the Sultanate of Khaladan. Indicative authorities and research materials. International Criminal Court. A. Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, 1998. B. Elements of crimes under the Rome Statute. Basic IHL documents. IHL treaties. Customary IHL. ICRC commentaries to the Geneva Conventions and its additional protocols. Cases. A. International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. B. International Criminal Tribunal for the Rwanda cases. C. International Criminal Court. D. International Court of Justice. Statement of agreed facts. 1. The Kingdom of Revis has an area of 703,763 km square and a population of approximately 43 million. Roughly one-third of the Ravian population live on the coastline, with 10 million inhabitants concentrated in the capital of Revis. The rest of the population is composed mainly of the traditionally nomadic groups, which are difficult to count in the census and occupy the inland territory. These freeman tribes have historically specialized in hunting, training the majestic indigenous Ravian eagle, the largest species in the world, to hunt flocks of migratory coots and other small mammals. Although Revis has a harsh climate, it is home to many unique species of flora and fauna, which, like the freeman, rely on natural aquifers that provide oases among the arid Ravian hills and desert dunes. Second, large reserves of natural mineral resources were discovered in the ravine interior several decades ago, and mining now forms 35% of the country's gross domestic product. Mining for cobalt, a mineral which is used in the manufacture of many new technologies, including mobile phones and lithium batteries, forms the majority of these mining operations. Over the last 30 years, permanent settlements of freemen, generally those displaced by the industry, have begun to form around the poorly regulated, open-cut mining operations where they are employed, often excavating cobalt by hand. 3. The modern day of Aravis. The modern day capital of Aravis is Port City, seat of His Excellency Shaddam II, and home to many business people from the neighboring Sultanate of Caladan, who send raw ravine materials for refinement and global export to Caladan and several other industrialized states. Revis shares the majority of its land borders with its wealthy neighbor Caladan and the rest with the Republic of Lilacs, which cultivates a smaller, competing cobalt mining and refining industry. See a next one, regional map. 4. Since the early 1990s, increasingly harsh weather conditions and more frequent and severe drought conditions have displaced Freeman tribes from the traditional lands in the harsher interior and created increasing tensions over the destruction of remaining grazing and hunting grounds for mining operations. The true Freeman movement was a political movement formed from a group of loosely aligned tribes and displaced freemen, who opposed the mining operations and sought an alternative to the conditions in the mining communities. With the assistance of NGOs, the true freemen lobbied domestically and internationally for World Heritage listing of the unique ravine aquifers and a moratorium expansion of mining operations, without success. The 1995 Silent Spring Declaration was a 10-point plan for the protection of the ravine wilderness and the Freeman way of life, presented to His Excellency Shaddam II by true Freeman leaders. 5. In 2009, a team of researchers, led by Professor Corino from the Secondus University, found that the levels of cobalt and chemical toxins in the urine and blood of freemen living in close proximity to the cobalt mines was many times the levels of people living in Arvis. The researchers claim that the trace minerals were responsible for the sharp rise in birth defects amongst the Freeman population and the apparent rise in chronic health conditions and cancers. Levels of biodiversity, plant growth, and the numbers of indigenous goats sharply declined around aquifers polluted by industrial waste from the mines. The researchers also observe a breakdown in traditional community structures and a rise in criminality among young men and accompanied children, who were the main demographic of shanty towns known as Salusa on the fringe of mining communities. 5 of the world's top technology companies, including Macrofilm and Pear, headquartered in Caladan, were named in a lawsuit filed by human rights lawyers on behalf of a dozen Freeman children and their parents, alleging the use of child labor in cobalt mines on the Revis. 6. In 2010, some of the true Freeman groups, frustrated with a lack of progress, formed a militia calling itself the True Freeman Resistance Army, TFRA. The TFRA was composed of units generally derived from tribal groups and commanded by a tribal leader. The TFRA lacked central leadership, with units coordinating but acting autonomously within their traditional tribal lands, and with the shared aim of compelling Shaddam II to accept the Silent Spring Declaration. The Red Eagles was the largest TFRA unit. It was composed of multiple armed bands and operated in the central western region of Ravis, an area particularly affected by mining. The leader of the Red Eagles, Lyot Keynes, was formerly an outspoken and well-respected leader of the true Freeman movement. 7. The TFRA soon began conducting raids on overland shipments of raw ravine materials. Caladan and Ravis imposed trade sanctions on the neighboring Republic of Lilacs for allegedly supplying the TFRA with small and light weapons. firefights and mortar attacks on mine security posts and transportation refueling stations resulted in significant casualties among security personnel, who were subsequently reinforced by the Ravine Imperial Forces (RIF). The TFRA claimed responsibility for an attack on a petrol tanker at a refueling depot on 4 April 2011. The explosion killed more than 50 people, which includes workers, security personnel, and RIF, and destroyed mine vehicles, 40 truck drivers, and personnel of the state-owned Shaddam Mining, and more than 300 Ravine police and RIF members providing security for the mining cargo were killed or injured over the course of the rest of that year. As well as attracting volunteers from the Salusa, the TFRA was joined by a number of international foreign fighters from the collection of at least 25 countries. The foreign fighters often fought with the TFRA during the warmer months, returning to their home countries before the onset of the harsh ravine winter. A whole band of the Red Eagles unit was composed of the visiting fighters. Foreign fighters posted on various social media accounts, often under eco-warrior hashtags and typically posing in ripped jeans with Kalashnikov or mortars next to TFRA members. In the post, TFRA members wore traditional brown Freeman robes for protection from the elements, with a sleeve or chest partly barred to display a large stylized ravine eagle tattoo. They often wore a traditional Freeman hunting blade through their belts. 9. Although violence reduced dramatically each year during winter, remotely detonated improvised explosive devices used by the TFRA continued to be damaging during these lulls in clashes. The raids, combined with the frequent sandstorms and very poor road conditions in the ravine interior, made cross-border overland transportation unfeasible, and the majority of cobalt and other mineral shipments were diverted to Caladan and other processing hubs via the Arvis port from the late 2013. Operation Desert Tempest 10. Profits from the sale of ravine cobalt suffered a significant downturn in 2014, with heavy disruption to raw supply by TFRA activists. Several mines in the interior were forced to close. On the 1st of May 2014, Shaddam II announced Operation Desert Tempest on national television, an official ground and air operation by the Ravine Imperial Forces to put down these terrorists. On the 4th of June 2014, His Excellency Saddam II signed a contract with Caladan for the purchase of 30 light surveillance drones to support the Ravine International Air Force. The drones were dispatched within months. 11. Owing to the frequency of sandstorms and strong weather conditions in the ravine interior, the drones' fuel consumption was significant as they navigated ravine airspace. Caladan tanker aircraft, crewed with pilots from the Caladan Air Force, provided air-to-air refueling of the drones to keep them in almost constant circulation. The Ravine Imperial Air Force made significant progress supporting ground operations against the TFRA, as the drones helped to attract the elusive armed bands in the ravine wilderness and to better avoid the unpredictable, fast-moving sandstorms. On 2nd of August 2014, Keane sent a WhatsApp picture message to the Red Eagles Unit WhatsApp group, showing himself with his foot on a downed Revis drone, with a Revis eagle perched on his forearm. The message was captioned, "Go forth and blind the earth destroyer's eyes in the sky." The message was forwarded and widely shared amongst different TFRA units. 13. By January 2015, the TFRA had damaged or downed a third of the drone fleet. On 15 January 2015, foreign fighter Eco-Warrior 99 posted footage on Twitter of several Ravine Eagles pursuing drones which were approaching two Caladan tankers mid-air. Soon after the Eagles made contact with the tracking drones, explosions were seen on the fuselage of the Caladan tankers, and both planes were downed, killing all 14 crew members. The footage was tagged #RedEagles, #NatureFightsBack. 14. The Sultan of Caladan responded by issuing a strong statement, condemning the act of terrorism on 15 of January and calling it Another brutal attack on civilians, this time on citizens of a foreign country. 15. Another post by foreign fighter Eco Warrior 99, 3 days earlier, had shown her next to TFRA Commander Keynes, standing over two dead men in ravine Imperial Forces uniforms. She was wearing an armband depicting the classic black TFRA eagle. Hers was additionally outlined in red, matching the red outline on Keynes' eagle tattoo. The post was captioned "Summer Break Among Friends" and was tagged #Justice, #Red Eagles, #TFRA, #Bleed Green, #True Freeman. Her profile picture shows her with a group of foreign fighters in the ravine dunes, drinking a toast with a popular Lexan whiskey and tagged "Cheers to Justice" and #Fight for Good. 16. During the Operation Desert Tempest, RIF military platoons were also sent into the interior to fight the TFRA. The platoons were required to operate remotely for up to a fortnight at a time. During sustained operations, navigating in the rough ravine terrain and engaging in combat, the troops became quickly fatigued. Saddam II approved the use of pharmacological fatigue countermeasures to enhance the performance of his troops under these conditions. 17. The so-called Go pills were issued to the medical officer assigned to each remote platoon. The newly developed Go pills were trial drugs, which was highly effective at reducing fatigue, allowing soldiers to function at a high cognitive level without sleep for around 36 hours. Confirming trial results from the Ravine Pharmacological Association, cognitive function and reaction time was noticeably improved in non-fatigued personnel beyond normal abilities. 18. Medical officers were required to carry ID cards which identified them as RIF medical personnel. The red crystal emblem on a white background was sewn onto both upper arms of their uniforms. Unfortunately, the co-pills had a tendency to cause an unpredictable anaphylactic reaction in around 5% of the recipients within the first half hour of dosing. Some soldiers reacted to the Go pills without having any adverse reaction to previous doses. RIF protocol therefore required the medical officer to dispose the Go pills to soldiers in the field and to clinically supervise them for adverse reactions, particularly within the first half hour. They rapidly administered adrenaline and treatment for anaphylaxis as necessary, allowing affected soldiers to continue performing their duties in the majority of cases. The medical officers also maintained a log of adverse reactions and individual reports of the performance of the drug trial. The logs were submitted to the chief medical officer of the RIF, who used them to refine the Go pill in collaboration with the Ravine Pharmacological Association. 20. On 11 November 2015, the whistleblower website Wikitrips published leaked documents on the drug trials and copies of some RIF medical officer logbooks from a source within the Ravine Pharmacological Association. 21. Several true Freeman leaders denounced on social media the use of unnatural substances to aid the operation of the Freeman and called on the TFRA to defend Ravis from the new chemical scourge. One true Freeman leader, Chinese Irulan, wrote that the strict Freeman taboo on the use of any alcohol or mind-altering drugs extended to the use of Go pills. He said that all traditional Freemen believe that imbibing such toxins is an insult to Mother Earth. We forbid it on the Freeman land. In a phone interview broadcast on Al Jazeera on 17 November 2015, the TFRA Commander Keynes expressed disgust that doctors and pharmacists were collaborating with the RIF on an unnatural chemical weapon. He warned that you are no longer healers. Repent and give up these unnatural practices, or you will pay. A link to Keynes' interview was widely shared in the Red Eagles unit and other TFRA WhatsApp groups by other members of the group. 22. On the 4th of January 2016, the TFRA claimed responsibility on social media for the killing of an RIF medical officer and the use of rabies and posted a photo alleged to depict Go pills in a pool of blood. Over the next 6 months in the TFRA, killed 25 RAF medical officers attached to RAF patrols across the country. In 5 cases, the medical officer was the only fatality in the attack. 23. His Excellency Shaddam II and the Sultanate of Kaldan both issued statements condemning the deliberate targeting of protected medical personnel by the TFRA. Aravis Accord 24. On 27 April 2015, several true Freeman and TFRA leaders, including Lyot King, signed the Aravis Accord with Shaddam II. The accord provided for a total ceasefire from the date of signing, with the undertaking to consider the designation of some of the aquifers in the interior of Revis as World Heritage Sites. Combat between the two sides dramatically decreased to occasional incidents among mining transport from this date onwards. His Excellency Shaddam II told the people of Ravis in a special broadcast that he welcomed the return peace and prosperity to the Kingdom of Ravis. 25. Two aquifers supplying large mining operations and communities closer to the coast were excluded from the consideration as World Heritage under the Aravis Code. This permanent settlement of freemen that had been established around the cobalt mines were very isolated and generally lacked basic public facilities and services. Life was extremely difficult for these inhabitants, as they regularly faced food shortages and work in the mines was strenuous and hazardous. The communities had traditionally been a fertile recruitment group for the TFRA and continued to discreetly support the roaming units with food and shelter after the Aravis Accord. The 3rd of June 2017, the New York Times published an article by Professor Corino highlighting the hazardous working conditions in the mine and the widespread use of child labor. Her article noted that older children were often expected to do the same work as adult laborers. They were generally paid far less. As a result, there was a widespread practice of falsifying identification documents, which was extremely basic and easy to forge, in order to claim that a person was ever 16 years old, and so should be entitled to a higher level of remuneration. 27. Professor Corino's article, who spoke of laboring for 12 hours a day with no protective clothing, with many significant health problems as a result. When asked about how he saw his future, one worker was quoted as saying, "I'm not going to waste my life here. I'm going to join the TFRA soon. My cousin signed up last year with his friend. They are small, so apparently they just get to look after the eagles." 28. Reflecting on the mines and the conditions in the concluding paragraph of her article, Professor Corino expressed concern that the only other option for many children was crime or the TFRA. She wrote that the TFRA were liberating children from one terrible situation to entice them into a more violent and precarious one, that of child soldiers. On the 12th of June 2018, a TFRA member published a video to his Facebook page called Training Day, showing a group of uniformed TFRA members, armed with Kalashnikov and traditional freeman hunting knives, swinging in shift against their thigh, and bearing red outline tattoos of eagle. The TFRA members were feeding ravine eagles and issuing various commands, to which the eagles would respond by picking up the large object before dropping them on nearby marked targets, both were returning to perch on the soldiers' arms. In the background was a group of boys who appeared to be young teenagers. The boys were not in TFRA uniform, but all wore red armbands bearing an image of a ravine eagle, using freeman hunting knife drawn from sheaths on their belts which dangled to below the knee on some. The boys were busily chopping up the meat which was being fed to the eagles by the uniformed TFRA members. At the end of the video, the large birds were taken away on perches held by two boys on each side. The video was taken next to an aquifer, with the sprawling shantytown of Salusa visible in the background. 30. This Facebook video was picked up and shared by a number of human rights groups. They claimed that it provided evidence for the use of child soldiers by the TFRA. That week, Keynes responded to the allegation with a Twitter post. The TFRA don't use child soldiers to fight their battles. I make all my commanders check everyone's documentation once they sign up. He announced that he would conduct an internal inquiry where he would visit the various bands to check their records. He said that the relevant local commanders would be cautioned and punished when there were no records kept. Arrest warrant. On 2nd of December 2018, the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court filed a warrant for the arrest of Mr. Lyat in relation to war crimes committed during the Ravine conflict. On 4th April 2019, Keynes visited the small republic of Lilacs to undergo a minor medical procedure. Following his discharge from the hospital, the Lilacs authorities arrested Keynes on 6 April and delivered him into the custody of the International Criminal Court. Revis and Caladan announced the lifting of trade sanctions imposed on Lilacs. Charges. Mr. Light Keynes is charged with count 1 with respect to downing of an aircraft belonging to the Sultanate of Caladan by foreign fighters on 15 January 2015, or on the basis of individual criminal responsibility by ordering the commission of Article 25(3)(b) of the Rome Statute. The war crime of internationally directing attacks against individual civilians not taking part in hostiles under Article 8(2)(ei) of the Rome Statute. Count 2. With respect to the attacks on the medical personnel of the Ravine Imperial Forces, or on the basis of individual criminal responsibility for inducing or soliciting the war crime of internationally directing attacks against buildings, materials, medical units, and transport, and personnel using this distinctive emblem of the Geneva Conventions in conformity with international law under Article 8(2)(e)(2) of the Rome Statute. Court 3. With respect to the recruitment or use of children by the Red Eagles between 3rd of June 2017 and 12th of June 2018 on the basis of command responsibility. Article 28A of the Rome Statute. The war crime of conscripting or enlisting children under the age of 15 years into armed forces or groups, using them to participate actively in hostilities under Article 8(2)(e)(7) of the Rome Statute. Annex 2. Kingdom of Revis is R. Sultanate of Caladan is C. Geneva Convention 1 on wounded and sick in armed forces in the field. Both R and C. Good. Geneva Convention 2nd on wounded, sick, and shipwrecked of armed forces at sea 1949. R agreed, C agreed. Geneva Convention the 3rd on prisoners of war. Revis agreed, Kaltanen agreed. Geneva Convention 4 on civilians 1949. Revis okay, Sultanate of Caladan okay. Biological Weapons Convention 1972. R okay, Caladan not okay. Additional Protocol 1 to the Geneva Conventions. R okay, C okay. Additional Protocol 2nd to the Geneva Conventions 1977. R okay, C no. Chemical Weapons Convention 1993. Chemical Weapons Convention 1993. Levis yes. Sultanate of Caladan yes. Additional Protocol 3rd to the Geneva Convention 2005. R no, C no. Statute of the International Criminal Court 1998. R yes, C yes. Amendment to the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court on the crime of aggression, Articles 8, 15, 11, 2020. R yes, C no. Montreal Document on Private Military and Security Companies. R yes, C yes. Arms Trade Treaty 2013. Montreux Document on Private Military and Successful Company 2011. R yes, C yes. Arms Trade Treaty. R yes, C no. Thank you for hearing me saying that English words. Now I want to upload it to YouTube, and I hope every member of the committee will be satisfied. Inshallah.